Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This video I want to talk about my birth story, how I came to go into labor, and then what that kind of looked like. It did not go as planned. Basically everything that I kind of planned for got kind of shuffled around. I did end up getting induced. I talked about that in my final pregnancy update. I was in a lot of pain, so my OB agreed to induce me. I went in on August 11th to be induced. My OB decided to induce me via Cervidil, and so that is a medication that is kind of like a tampon that they insert inside of you, and is supposed to ripen, soften, and shorten your cervix. So I went in around 11 o'clock to have the Cervidil put in, and then I went home because I wasn't prepared to stay. I figured they would send me home because my OB said that that could take days to have effect on my cervix. Hi. Hi. Say hi, I'm Hazel. She's waving. You're so cute. So I got home and the medication started working very quickly. Pretty much on the way home it started working. I started getting really hot and I started having cramps. I mean, I already had cramps, but they started to intensify. I lied down because I figured I should rest just in case, you know, I did go into labor very quickly, and you know, that's an exhausting process, so I figured I should rest. I didn't fall asleep because the cramps got worse very quickly. Hi, pretty girl. You're smiling. Hi. At 6 o'clock, I had to call them back to let them know how I was doing. So when I called them back at 6, I described the cramps, and I mentioned how it felt like I was having menstrual cramps in my back, and the nurse was like, "That's early labor." They gave me the option of coming back in right then and there, so I did decide to go in. Even though my contractions were not close together or very long, I still did go in because I hadn't felt her move in a while. I mean, I had felt her move, but it wasn't like her normal. So I went in and they put me in triage and they monitored the baby, and when the nurse found her heartbeat, she kind of was looking around my belly almost to see if she could get a better reading. Her heart rate actually had decelerated. Oh no, oh no. You don't like that part of the story? Yeah, neither do I. What's going on? So her heart rate had decelerated, and the nurse had to page a doctor to come in right away so they could take out the medication because the medication was bothering her. That was a little bit scary. I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't know if I had harmed her. When the doctor took out the medication, she examined my cervix and it was still closed shut. So because of the decel, I wasn't able to go home. I was admitted at that point because they couldn't take another risk. They had to monitor the baby now for 2 hours. I was still in a lot of pain, but because, again, of her heart rate decelerating, they couldn't give me any medication. So what they offered me was like a shot, but they had to wait 2 hours to make sure her heart rate went back up to normal and that everything else was fine. After that 2 hours, they gave me a shot of morphine. It wasn't very effective. I slowly started to stop being able to move. At one point, I had to go to the washroom and I needed help because I was, again, in a lot of pain, and the nurse came over to help me up to go, and as she was helping me up, I felt this flow of fluid. It was just like kind of like a pop, and then Niagara Falls. Fluid just kept flowing and flowing and flowing, and at first I thought that I had peed myself because I kind of felt a little bit of relief, but it just kept flowing and flowing, and it was just an ocean in my hospital bed, and I burst into laughter because I was just like, what is going on? And then I was like, this must be my water breaking, but I wasn't expecting it to be that dramatic because they always tell you that it's not like in the movies. Well, for me, it was exactly like it was in the movies. Anyway, so we were laughing pretty hard about that, and I was very glad that it broke on its own, because if it hadn't, they would have had to go and break the water themselves, which was the plan anyway. That's why they had given me the Cervidil to soften my cervix so that they could get up there, because it was closed shut. So that was good, because apparently getting your water broken is painful. After my water broke, things started moving very, very, very quickly, and it wasn't long before they put me in a room. I had messaged my doula. I had been keeping her updated, but she had a family emergency, so she wasn't able to come to the hospital, and she actually wasn't able to be there. And I just decided that my one friend who had come with me to the hospital that night could just stay with me while I was delivering. The night was kind of a blur, mostly because it was just me being in a lot of pain. My friend was great company. She got me lots of apple juice and pretty much just waited on me hand and foot, and I didn't really realize how much I needed her until like I needed her. It got to a point where I was in so much pain that it was hard for me to go to the washroom, because every time I went to the washroom, a little bit more of the amniotic fluid would leak out, and I was wearing this like diaper slash pad thing in the mesh underwear, and every single time I went to the bathroom I had to change it. So my friend at one point, she was changing them for me, but I really didn't care because I was really not with it. And then at some point during one of my trips to the washroom and gushed of fluid, my mucus plug came out. Eventually I started like shaking and feeling like I was gonna puke. So the doctors came in and examined me, and I was only 1 centimeter dilated. And I'm like, of course I'm only 1 centimeter dilated. They gave me another shot of morphine, but it didn't last very long. It only lasted for an hour, and it only just like slightly took the edge off. My contractions just kept getting more intense, and I stopped being able to breathe through them. I don't know what point in the night or in the morning this was, but they examined me again and I was 2 centimeters dilated, and at this point I was like, I can't take this anymore. They went ahead and ordered an epidural. I personally have never heard of someone getting an epidural at 2 centimeters, but I have no shame, because that was a heck ton of pain. And you know what? Everyone's labor and delivery story is different, and I had had enough. The doctor came in to give me the epidural. I chose not to like look at the tools or see what he was doing over when he was getting set up, because I really didn't want to think about exactly what was going in my back. So he put in some freezing, and I was very nervous because freezing in the past has not really worked for me, and it takes until they hit a nerve for them to realize that the freezing hasn't worked and they need more. So it was every single time I've ever had to have something frozen, it's like I'm waiting to feel pain because I know I'm gonna feel pain. I was also having contractions as he was putting this needle in my back, and yeah, he inserted it, and then eventually I did feel pain, and I said ow, and then he was like, I think you're feeling pressure, and I'm like, no sir, I'm feeling pain, that's why I'm saying ow. He kept going and it started hurting even more, and then he asked me, okay, where is the pain? And I'm thinking like, what do you mean where is it? Exactly where you're putting the tube. But I guess like when I think this through, he didn't exactly know where the tube was at that point because he had already put it in, so he needed me to say where, you know. Anyway, so I got a little sassy and I kind of started yelling. It all turned out fine, and I had a catheter put in. I had a new nurse come on in the morning, and I'm gonna say we butt heads a little bit. I also was under the impression this whole time that your OB delivers your baby, and I found out that that's not always true, and a lot of the times the nurses deliver your baby. Like what? I had no idea that this woman that I met, who I wasn't exactly fond of from the beginning, would be delivering my child. I feel like we should get to pick who delivers our child. The doctor who was on at that point too was also a male, and I said, you know, I had preferred a female to do it, and he was kind of like, well, I'm the only doctor here, so I'm gonna have to do it. And I was like, well, can't the resident do it because she's been doing it all the other times I came in? And he was like, yeah, but I'm in charge. The morning went by really fast because I was able to sleep because I had an epidural. And then at one point I started to feel like I had to go to the bathroom, like I had to, like, you know, like number 2. And the nurse told me that that was because like the baby was close to coming. So she examined me and I was like 8 or 9 centimeters dilated, and this was like 10 o'clock in the morning or something, and like that was crazy to me. By 11 o'clock or like noon, I was fully dilated and I was ready to start pushing. But when I did push, I didn't really know how. Like I didn't really know exactly how to like push her out, because like I don't know how to describe it, but it's like you have to go to the bathroom, except I didn't have control over those muscles. It was just like me leaning forward and like trying to, like, I don't know, tighten my abdomen to push. Like I didn't know how else to push, and this nurse was like coaching me how to push, and all she would say over and over was harder, 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 push, push, push. You know, like it was a football game and I was the quarterback. It was insane, and I started to get really stressed out. Before that, I had been given Benadryl because my skin had been itchy for the epidural, so I was a little bit loopy, and Benadryl doesn't really agree with me. It kind of gets me a little bit spacey, and I get a little bit like, I don't know, my senses are heightened, and so I can't handle like intense stimulus. I know that sounds very strange, but it's true. So she was like yelling almost like harder, hard, and I just at one point had to stop and be like, I'm sorry, but I can't handle this. Like I can't handle you repeating the same thing over and over and over and over and over. Like it's really loud, and like I'm getting really anxious. And she took it so personally. Like she got so defensive. Like we ended up having an argument, and she was like, you need to be feeling the contractions, the epidural is too strong, we need to wean it off, like you're not feeling the contractions, you're not pushing properly. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that like you repeating that over and over is really stressful, and it's kind of upsetting, and I don't know how to push any harder. So I'm telling you, I don't know how to push harder. It doesn't work for you to keep telling me to push harder. It was an odd scenario, the argument we were having, but she got so mad. Eventually she was like, that's it, I have to walk out and I'm gonna let this epidural wear off. And I'm so angry because I'm like, don't you freaking dare let this medication run off, because I do not want to be in pain. Pain is a huge trigger for my panic attacks. But because this nurse was angry with me or frustrated with me, I ended up having a panic attack anyway, so that really sucked. And so there I was, you know, just everything out in the open, you know, having a panic attack. And so she left, and it was just me and my friend, and my friend knows that there's nothing really you can say to me once I'm there. So I was just crying and crying and crying, and she comes back in and she's like, oh no, 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 like this can't be happening, like I've upset you. And I'm thinking like, yeah. So she went and talked to the doctor and then the resident, who I really liked. They came back in, and I was so grateful to see the resident. Like she was awesome. She looked at me and she was like, so new plan. She was like, how about when it's time to push on your contractions, we count to 10, and at 10 you stop pushing, take a break, and then when your next one comes, we start pushing again and count to 10, and then you stop and take a break. And I thought, wonderful, that's magnificent. And then she was very good at like describing exactly how to push, and that was very helpful. And it was very like calm and like not really intense. Like I didn't feel like I was being screamed at. Like it was a lot better. I tried, but the baby's head was going like in and out and in and out and in and out, or like up and down, and there wasn't really any progress. I pushed for 2 hours and there was no progress, and at this point the resident had to step out for whatever reason, and so I was left alone with the male doctor and this nurse who I had not too long ago kind of gotten into a fight with. At that point, like, I was really upset, but I couldn't really be upset because I was trying to deliver a baby. I was really embarrassed. I knew the nurse was frustrated with me because she wasn't talking, and you know, the male doctor was just not a person that I wanted up in there. I was kind of embarrassed for my friend to see me in that kind of way, and also the nurse kept asking my friend to help, which I didn't want her to help, and I had stated that like over and over and over again, but the nurse insisted that she help. So there wasn't any progress, and I was starting to feel pain again, which I thought was weird because I had been pressing the epidural button, and they had been telling me to press the epidural button when I was feeling the pain. The pain kept getting worse, and it was like affecting my ability to push. Eventually the doctor said we had to start considering other options, and he asked me if I was okay with a C-section, and I said yes. I was really kind of like disheartened because I had really tried hard to push, and so like it was a little bit disappointing. but ultimately I wanted her out safe and healthy. When another nurse came in and you know, I was saying to her, like, I'm in a lot of pain, like, can I get a shot or something, like, before I go into the OR, like, how long is it gonna be before the surgery, because like I'm in a lot of pain. And she was like, oh, press your epidural button, you have an epidural. And so I was like, I have been pressing it, like I'm still in pain. And she goes and checks the machine and she goes, there's no medication left, it's run out. I cannot describe how angry and upset I was in that moment, because the nurse that I had gotten into a fight with, she let the medication run out so that I could start feeling the contractions again. It was absolutely ridiculous, and I feel like some of those situations could have been avoided if my doula had been there. So they brought me into the OR, and I was in a lot of pain when I got in the OR, and the resident that I had liked came back, and she came over to me and was like, hi Whitney, like I'm gonna read to you. And like I interrupted her and I grabbed her and I was like, I'm so scared. I had this like moment of like being terrified because I was in a lot of pain. I was about to have surgery. I wanted to know if the baby was okay. I had no idea if she was okay, what was going on. I was scared. And then they got me to like shimmy over onto a table, and that was hard because I couldn't move my lower half. They put in the freezing, you know, did the test with the ice pack. I still felt it cold on my stomach. So they were like, huh, that's weird. We'll give you a little more freezing. And they had to do that 4 times, and they could not freeze my abdomen. So then they told me they were gonna have to put me out, and I was like, just do it. Like, just do whatever you have to do. I want this to be over. I want her out of me. Just finish this job. They put me out, and that was that. I woke up, and the first thing I saw was her. They were holding her, like, cleaning her up, and she had this like little white hat on with a bow, and I saw her eyes were open. I couldn't speak because I was all groggy, but they came over and put her on my chest. She started looking for my nipple right away, which I thought was so fantastic, and she actually found it herself. Like, how do they know? After the surgery, they brought me into the recovery room, and then not long after that they transferred me to the postpartum unit. And we were in the postpartum unit for 5 days. She had jaundice, and it got worse while we were there because I was having a hard time breastfeeding. She didn't eat for the first like 24 hours really. All she did was sleep, and I was in a lot of pain from the surgery, and I couldn't move. And because she hadn't latched on the second night, and she hadn't really gotten a lot in her in the first like 48 hours, her jaundice got worse. So then it became like breastfeeding boot camp, and it was a lot of me like troubleshooting breastfeeding so that we could get her feeding and get her like going to the washroom so that we could flush out the jaundice. We were discharged on August 17th, and we took a cab home, and that was that. Overall, my experience with labor and delivery wasn't the greatest. It was a terrible experience that gave me the best gift ever, and I would do it all over again, because even though that moment in time was so hard for me and I was very vulnerable, it was a very short moment for something that like is gonna bring me like a lifetime of joy. So I named her Hazel Joy. When I first saw her, everything felt so right. Everything felt okay. I just felt at peace, and I felt so happy. So that was pretty much it. That was my labor and delivery. I will do a postpartum update, and I will talk about the things that happened postpartum and the recovery from the C-section, because it was kind of a gong show after. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Say bye, Hazel Joy. Say bye. She's calmed down. This girl loves her sleep. She's like me.